Okay, I got cut off at the end of the last video. I was just about to open Photoshop and show you what I'm going to do a storyboard example of. So I'll just cover the first couple frames of a storyboard here. So you got a guy in a fictitious fantasy world, sees the sun off in the distance, or is it in the distance because he punches it, it flies off stage, and then it comes screaming back, knocks him on the ground, and then we zoom in and see that he has an idea, I guess, to get revenge on the sun. Okay, so I have my image opened up, changed the background color, but you can see the width, the height, just like we talked about in the last video. A lot of times it helps to have a photographic reference when you're building a character if you want realistic human proportions and stuff like that. So this will be a little bit embarrassing, but what I did was took a shot here of myself, and I'm going to use this to build the character and show you the example. So here's my character getting ready to take a stab at the sun. A couple notes here before I actually do this is you can and probably should draw with a little more detail than I'm going to show here, but the styles are numerous, as you've seen looking at the examples, so you just have to find your style. I'm going to show you this in Adobe Animate, of course, but know that this could also be done in Illustrator if you just have a high preference for that program, because you can draw in Illustrator, make your total artboard project in Illustrator, but then not only that, you could use the same techniques that I'm talking about here, just using layers in Illustrator, and then bring the parts in to Adobe Animate when you actually start to animate. But under no circumstances should you use bitmap images, like draw in Photoshop and then think that you're going to be able to reuse those. Now, if you want to take all that time to make a storyboard that you can't use for your final animation, that's completely fine. I mean, there's a lot of people that just storyboard for a living, and then they just give their drawings over to the animator, and the animator, using this program, would have to then create them with vector graphics. Now, what I'm going to show you, I'm going to do with the brush tool. It's probably the least accurate way to do it, but it's quicker. And if you have a Wacom tablet, it can be pretty accurate. Be just like drawing or painting. But you could also use the pen tool if you've learned that in other classes, you know, especially if you took an Illustrator class. And then, as I'm showing you, you can place an image in there and trace from it. And then I'll save this detail for a little later. Okay, so let's zoom in to a spot that we're going to draw. Here we'll focus on the upper arm, and then taking the brush tool, we're just going to draw around. The key thing is that we want to recognize those pivot points. So instead of stopping drawing the arm here, we're going to go down into the forearm, noting that that area right there would be our pivot. And we do want to be careful about layers here. Maybe lock our image layer for now, and then we could name these like L for left upper arm, and then go back here, wake my drawing up, and I'll do K shortcut for the paint dropper tool, and we'll fill that in, select away, and so we now have the upper arm done. And now, one of the things that's nice about this program is we can turn this into a symbol, and it's there in our library, and we can continue to reuse it, and that's going to save us having to draw a lot in future frames where that character is again, but also it's a usable piece for animating. I do an F8, give this a name, like again L underscore upper underscore arm, click OK, and then I'm just going to keep on drawing additional pieces. So then I would continue drawing pieces, and any piece that is going to move in my animation, I'd convert those into a symbol. Seems like a lot of work, but now you'll start to see why it will pay off. And when I want to move to my second frame, of him punching the sun. I just simply go into animate, copy all of my frames over, and it really doesn't matter whether I copy them right to the very next frame or a few frames away. I kind of like to go about 10 frames away and do an F6, not a 5, but a F6, just so it's a little bit easier to see where the difference is. And we'll do that same thing for the rest of these frames. F6. And I'll just pay close attention that I'm about to change not the first keyframe, but the second keyframe. And I'll just put everything into position. But what's going to be kind of helpful, at least for you to see right now, is that when I move the arm, rather than just have to tweak it and move it all around, what I'm going to do is select that symbol with the transform, the free transform tool, and I'm going to move the center point with the free transform to the pivot point, and then I can take the arm and put it into the position that it is in that second frame of my drawing. And then I'll move this, and I can move the pivot point here as well. Put the pieces back together, put the hand up in there, and that ball had started moving a little bit in that second frame. And then we also just need to add the arrow. So we'll put a plus here, give ourselves another layer to draw on, put an F7 in that frame, and then put out an arrow. So we'll just keep in with the same style and just make that with the brush tool. And maybe make it a little bit closer to the ball so it's more obvious what it applies to. But now you see we have, first frame took a lot of time. Second frame didn't take much time at all. Third frame just looks like he's kind of pleased with himself. The sun is off the stage. Now, I'm not going to take the time to put the facial expressions in here because you get the idea. But, whoops, that would be a mistake. So let's go to out here and click on the first frame, go all the way down, do a shift click, do a F6, and then we can get rid of things we don't need in this frame, like the sun and the arrow. A little bit of advice or caution here is keep in mind that you do need to get the storyboard done in, within the deadline. So maybe you don't want to put too much detail or too much perfection in here. Like, that's kind of a subtle smile, but it's not noticeable. I could go for something, totally cheesy just to get the point across, although I'd have to smoothen that out, but you get the idea. And then when I'm ready to animate, I go back in here and I work on the face and getting the facial expressions, because obviously the face, when it smiles, the lip position and everything changes. But if you spend all that time now, you might not get the storyboard done on time. So just know that it is super easy to just say, okay, I don't like this head anymore. I'm going to get rid of it. Boom, put a brand new one in there. But at least you got the storyboard done. You showed the emotions on the storyboard. And speaking of, we've already got 3 frames done. So if we want to get the next one in, which is him getting floored by the ball coming back, then it's again going to be a pretty easy proposition here where we're just going to copy everything over. Click, shift click on the last one, do our F6, and then move our parts. Hopefully you get the idea that for a little bit of work up front, you get a bigger bang for the buck here. In just a few minutes we created 1, 2, 3, 4 keyframes, and in the next video I will show you how, when you've done all your work, created all your frames, that you can just come in and then just simply export each one of these stages and then make the actual storyboard from it.